Is autism a form of emotional abuse? Some NTYs, especially those suffering from Cassandra Syndrome, might say, yeah, maybe. So this is kind of like one of the hardest questions you'll ever ask yourself. Is it autism or is it abuse? So let's look at capacity versus choice. Autism changes capacity. It changes how a brain processes emotion, how it reads cues, how it tolerates stress. So it can mean your ASD husband truly struggles to notice tone, facial expressions, or the emotional meaning behind your words. And this is not cruelty, that's wiring. Abuse is about choice. Somebody who's going to be abusive, they choose to do that. It's the deliberate use of power, control, or humiliation to dominate another person. So when you're trying to sort out which one you're living with, don't just ask why something happened, ask what happens next. Don't just ask why something happened, ask what happens next. If someone can't do something, you'll see confusion and often remorse. If they won't, you'll see defensiveness, blame, or entitlement. So let's make that real. If your ASD partner forgets to respond to your text because maybe he was hyper-focused, that's capacity. If he read it, ignored it, and later said, "You're so needy," that's choice. So capacity deserves patience. Choice demands boundaries. When you're living in a fog of confusion as someone suffering from Cassandra Syndrome, the mind keeps trying to explain things away. So I tell my ladies in the Cassandra Syndrome recovery group, stop explaining and start recording. Write down what happened, how it made you feel, and what happened after. You're not building a case against your ASD husband, you're building clarity for you. So here's what to look for. Does the behavior stop once the stress ends? Okay, well that's overload. Or does it continue after calm with no awareness, no repair, no ownership? Okay, well that's control. A meltdown ends with recovery. Abuse ends with repetition. So if your ASD partner apologizes, takes small responsibility, and tries again differently, well, that's progress. We want that. If you're blamed for their behavior, "Look at what you made me do," he says. That's manipulation, and that's not okay. After every rupture, something should move towards healing. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be clumsy, a small act of service, a note, a question like, "Are you okay?" That's repair. It's the nervous system saying, "I still care." But when there's never any movement towards repair, only silence, deflection, blame, that's emotional starvation. And starvation isn't love, it's slow death. If you're unsure, try saying, "Hey, I love you, but I can't keep being hurt this way. I need to see some consistent change." Then step back and watch the behavior, not the promises. Change is seen in small daily respect, not in panicky apologies. If you ever feel afraid in your own home, believe your body. It's telling you the truth. You don't need a diagnosis to justify protecting yourself. Create a safety plan, someone you can text, a phrase that means "I need help," a friend you can stay with. Safety isn't drama, it's wisdom. And if what you're feeling isn't fear, but deep emotional exhaustion, then create space. Take a walk. Go quiet when the conversation turns cruel. Rest before explaining. You're allowed to protect your peace. You're allowed to exist beyond the chaos. Now let's talk about holding both truths. You can hold two truths at once. Your ASD spouse might be neurodivergent, and you might still be profoundly wounded. You can understand why he struggles and still decide that his struggle can't keep you defining your safety. That's not abandonment, that's adulthood. It's the hardest kind of love, the kind that finally includes you. So if this resonates, subscribe now because I'll be putting out several videos each week. I don't want you to miss a thing. Also, I have a book from Amazon specifically for Cassandra Syndrome sufferers. I'm going to put a link to that book in the description area and pinned in the comment section. Hello to all the Cassandras out there today. And in this video, I want to talk about how toxic chronic guilt contributes to your anxiety and depression. And some of you might be thinking, well, that's a weird tie-in. Toxic guilt, Cassandra Syndrome. Hear me out. Hear me out. Now, while occasional feelings of guilt can serve a constructive purpose, prompts us to apologize, make amends, change our behavior, and so on, but chronic toxic guilt is debilitating. It's going to affect your immune system, your mental health, and so on. Toxic guilt differs from healthy guilt in that the toxic version is relentless, and it's also disproportionate to the situation, and it leads to an overwhelming sense of shame and self-blame. For example, a person might feel guilty for not being able to meet others' expectations or for prioritizing their own needs over someone else's. How many times has that happened? If you're honest with yourself, especially if you're an empath and codependent, you have put others' needs ahead of your own. Can't do that anymore. So when people are consumed by guilt, they start to obsess over their perceived failures or sins, and I put that in quotes, and this is going to lead to heightened anxiety about your self-worth, your competence, and this is going to result in a constant state of worry about how you're being perceived by others or fear of further failure. Those that are plagued by toxic guilt often have a heightened sensitivity to criticism. In other words, they're going to interpret neutral comments as personal attacks, which of course is going to lead to increased anxiety about social situations and interactions. To cope with feelings of guilt, some people may avoid situations that trigger these emotions. For example, they might withdraw from social engagements to prevent facing judgment. And while this avoidance may provide temporary relief, it ultimately reinforces feelings of isolation and anxiety. Now, on the flip side, some people who experience toxic guilt may overcompensate for their feelings of guilt by trying to please others excessively. And this leads to burnout and resentment. It creates the perfect storm for anxiety and depression to thrive as these individuals struggle to meet unrealistic expectations, both their own expectations and the expectations of others. If you're not sure whether you have been under the influence of toxic guilt, and by the way, sometimes that can happen at a very unconscious level, let's look at some of the traits. Over-apologizing, constantly saying I'm sorry, even for minor mistakes or in situations where an apology isn't even warranted. People-pleasing. In other words, feeling compelled to take on others' burdens or responsibilities, sacrificing your own needs and desires to avoid disappointing anyone. Does that sound like you? Self-blame. This is holding yourself accountable for situations beyond your control, such as the failures or hardships of others. Have you taken on too much responsibility for your ASD spouse? Have you gone to great lengths to accommodate, bend over backwards, walk on thin ice? Okay. Another one would be avoiding personal joy. This would be fearing that pursuing your own happiness or success will make others feel inadequate or resentful, or pursuing your own personal joy makes you feel guilty because you don't feel like you deserve to have happiness and joy, especially if you have some childhood trauma or abandonment issues from the past. Another trait of toxic guilt is when we try to manipulate emotions. In other words, we use guilt as a way to control or influence others' behaviors, such as making them feel guilty for not meeting our expectations. Another one is denying self-care. This is neglecting your own health and well-being because you feel guilty for taking time away from helping others. Another one would be chronic worry. This is an ongoing sense of anxiety about how your actions may affect others, even when there's no clear reason for concern. Comparing yourself to others. This is constantly measuring your worth against others and feeling guilty for not achieving what they have. And the last trait of toxic guilt I want to look at is regret over choices. This is obsessively ruminating over past decisions and feeling guilty for not making different choices, even when those choices weren't appropriate at the time. Or maybe at the time you didn't even know that there were other choices available. So the point to this video is recognizing the impact of toxic guilt, and again, that can operate at a very unconscious level, is the first step toward breaking the cycle of anxiety and depression it creates. Have you beat up on yourself at some level? Do you feel like it has been your fault at some level that the relationship with the autistic spouse has gone so terribly? Do you feel like you've lost a piece of yourself? Do you feel like you've turned into somebody that you don't like? Then it's possible that you're experiencing toxic guilt. So what we need to do is start the process of mustering up some self-forgiveness, self-compassion, self-acceptance. You were a loving person. You still are a loving person. You will always be a loving person. There's nothing, absolutely nothing, to be feeling guilty about. Hey, I just got a brief message to all the Cassandras out there. Many wives of an autistic husband may interpret his blind spots as a lack of love due to differences in communication and emotional expression. People on the autism spectrum often struggle with social cues and may not respond in ways that are expected or understood by you. It's totally understandable why you would view that as lack of love. For example, your husband might not recognize when you need emotional support. He may not be aware of your feelings about certain situations. He may miss certain cues that may leave you feeling neglected or unimportant. And understandably so, it looks as though he doesn't care. In addition, since many relationships are built on shared emotional experiences and understanding, when he has a different way of processing emotions or a different way of responding to situations, it does create a disconnect. So you're not imagining this stuff, but there is no malicious intent on his part. The end result is the same, though. You feel lonely or unvalued, misinterpreting his behavior as indifference rather than a result of having blind spots that are associated with autism. So this brings home the point that open communication and education about autism can help bridge this gap. Safety doesn't sound like silence. It sounds like being allowed to speak without losing belonging. So many people mistake quiet for peace. They think if no one's arguing and if no one's crying, then everything must be fine. But silence isn't always safety. Sometimes silence is just fear disguised as calm. So when someone stays quiet because they're afraid to be honest, that's not peace, that's self-protection. True safety isn't about keeping things smooth. It's about being real and still being loved. Real safety sounds like this. I can tell you how I feel and still you'll stay with me. I can disagree and not lose you. I can bring my truth and you won't punish me for it. That's what belonging actually feels like. Safety has a sound. It sounds like voices being heard, not hushed. It sounds like curiosity instead of correction. It sounds like, I didn't realize that I hurt you, tell me more. It sounds like repair. It sounds like care. So in families, that means a child can say, I'm upset, and still feel close to the parent. In marriage, it means disagreement doesn't mean danger. In any relationship, it means truth doesn't cost connection. And that's the heart of belonging, the courage to be fully seen and still held. We all long for that kind of safety, where love doesn't depend on silence. So remember this. Silence can keep the peace, but it can't build trust. Safety doesn't mean avoiding truth. It means making truth safe to share. Because when people know that they can speak without losing belonging, that's when healing begins. And that's what real safety sounds like. If this resonated with you, then please subscribe, because I'll be putting out more videos later this week. I'll be interested in listening to your comments in the comment section, and I will respond to them. You've spent so long trying to fix him, your ASD husband. The meltdowns, the shutdowns, the emotional distance. But what if I told you the healing starts the moment you stop fixing and start feeling? Overfunctioning feels noble. You cook, manage, explain, soothe, and plan. But the truth is, you've become the system's stabilizer, not his partner. And that's not love, that's survival. So start small. Say, for example, I'll be at yoga Wednesday at 6. Dinner's yours. You're not being selfish. You're inviting reality to grow up. Pick 3 calming practices that belong only to you. A morning walk, soft music, deep breathing. Then 3 points of connection outside the marriage. A friend, a support group, a pet, your sister. And finally, 3 daily choices. The mug you love, the playlist that steadies you, the book you've been saving. Little choices rebuild the muscle of you. At night, write 1 line. For example, today I honored myself by, and you fill in the blank. That sentence becomes a lifeline. Because healing yourself doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've stopped giving out. So in the comment section, I'd like for you to share 1 small choice you'll make today that says, I matter. You can't fix him, but you can heal you, and that changes everything. I have a Cassandra Syndrome recovery group. The link will be in the description area and pinned in the comment section. Also, I have several books on Amazon geared towards NTYs that are recovering from Cassandra Syndrome. The link will also be in the description area. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section, and I will respond. Hey, quick message to neurotypical wives out there who may be suffering from Cassandra Syndrome. Do you feel emotionally exhausted, lonely, confused, disconnected in your relationship? And have you found yourself wondering, why do I feel so alone even though I'm married? And how did I lose myself somewhere along the way? And will I ever feel like me again? Okay, if so, you're not alone. Most of the neurotypical partners I work with experience profound emotional deprivation that slowly erodes their sense of self, confidence, and hope. Here's the good news though. Recovery is possible. I've created a recovery program that's now available as a self-paced online course. Originally offered as a live group, this program has helped participants understand the emotional deprivation they've experienced, make sense of the confusion and self-doubt, and begin rebuilding their sense of identity and emotional strength. Now you can go through the same material from the privacy and comfort of your own home and move through it at the pace that works best for you. Now, whether you're just beginning to understand what you've been experiencing or you've been searching for answers for years, this course will help you begin the journey back to yourself. You don't have to continue surviving on emotional crumbs. You deserve clarity, support, and you deserve to understand what's happened to you. And most importantly, you deserve to recover. The version of you that existed before confusion, exhaustion, and self-doubt is still there, and this course was created to help you find that part of yourself again. Enroll today, won't you? You don't have to wait for the next live group. Your healing can begin now. The link will be in the description area underneath this video and also pinned in the comments section.